The pencil stopped moving the moment Olivia Owens heard the crack of a twig behind her, and she realized with a sinking stomach that someone had been watching her draw for who knew how long. She turned quickly, clutching her sketchbook to her chest, her heart hammering as she found herself staring up at a tall cowboy standing just beyond the cottonwood trees that lined Silver Creek. The year was 1878, and she had thought herself safely alone in this quiet corner of Red Bluff, California, far enough from her aunt's boarding house that she could sketch in peace without judgment or interruption. The man wore dusty trail clothes and a hat that shadowed his face, but she could see his hands were raised slightly, palms out in a gesture meant to calm. "I did not mean to startle you, miss," he said, his voice low and careful. "I heard the water and came to let my horse drink." "I can leave you be." Olivia's grip on her sketchbook loosened slightly as she took in his posture, the way he kept his distance, the genuine apology in his tone. "How long have you been standing there?" "Only a moment." He shifted his weight, and she noticed he was being truthful. If he had been there longer, he would have settled into a more comfortable stance. "I saw you were concentrating and did not want to disturb you, but I suppose I made it worse by waiting." She felt her shoulders relax. "The water is for everyone. I do not own the creek." He nodded and walked slowly toward the water's edge, leading a bay mare behind him. The horse dipped her head immediately to drink, and the cowboy crouched down, filling his canteen. Olivia watched him, her artist's eye already noting the line of his shoulders, the way the afternoon light caught in his dark hair when he removed his hat to wipe his brow. He was perhaps 25, she guessed, only a few years older than her own 22 years. "Are you passing through Red Bluff?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. He looked up at her, and she saw his eyes were a striking gray-green like sage after rain. "I am looking for work, actually. Ranch work if there is any to be had. I am Tobias Crain. Olivia Owens." She set her sketchbook down on the rock beside her, though she kept one hand on it protectively. "The Mercer Ranch north of town was looking for hands last I heard. My aunt runs the boarding house on Main Street, and Mr. Mercer mentioned it when he came through for supplies 3 days ago." "I am grateful for the information." Tobias stood, replacing his hat. "Your aunt's boarding house, you said. Would that be the one with the green shutters?" "The very same. Mrs. Dorothy Owens, though everyone calls her Dot." He smiled then, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made Olivia's breath catch. "I will remember that. Thank you, Miss Owens." She thought he would leave then, mount his horse and ride toward town, but instead he lingered, his gaze drifting to her sketchbook. "May I ask what you were drawing?" Olivia hesitated. Her drawings were private, a window into how she saw the world, and she rarely showed them to anyone beyond her aunt. But something about Tobias Crain's genuine curiosity, the respectful distance he maintained, made her want to share. "The creek," she said simply. "The way the light moves through the water over the stones. I would like to see it, if you are willing to show me." She picked up the sketchbook and turned it so he could see, though she did not hand it to him. The drawing showed the creek in careful detail, each ripple and reflection rendered in graphite, the surrounding trees framing the water like a natural cathedral. She had spent 2 hours on it, lost in the meditative rhythm of observation and creation. Tobias stepped closer, his eyes moving over the page with obvious appreciation. "That is remarkable. You have real talent, Miss Owens." "Thank you." She felt warmth rise in her cheeks. "It is just a hobby, something I do for myself." "It is more than a hobby if you can create something like that." He met her eyes. "Do you sell your work?" "No, I have never considered it. You should." He gestured to the drawing. "People would pay good money for something that beautiful." Olivia found herself smiling despite her usual shyness about her art. "Perhaps." though I draw for the love of it, not for money. The best things in life usually work that way. Tobias's mare had finished drinking and now stood patiently, waiting. I should let you get back to your drawing. Thank you again for the information about the ranch work. You are welcome. She watched him mount his horse with easy grace, the movement of someone who had spent most of his life in the saddle. He touched the brim of his hat in farewell, and she raised her hand in a small wave. Then he was riding away, following the creek path back toward the main road into town. Olivia sat down again, picking up her pencil, but found she could not concentrate on the water anymore. Instead, her hand moved almost of its own accord, sketching the line of a man's shoulders, the angle of a hat brim, the way someone sat a horse like he was born to it. She told herself it was just practice, just capturing an interesting subject while the image was fresh in her mind. She told herself it meant nothing at all. The next morning, Olivia was helping her aunt prepare breakfast for the boarding house guests when the bell over the front door jangled. Dot called out, "Be right with you," while sliding eggs onto plates, and Olivia automatically wiped her hands on her apron and went to greet whoever had arrived. Tobias Crain stood in the front room, hat in hand, looking somewhat more cleaned up than he had by the creek. His dark hair was still damp, suggesting a recent bath, and he had changed into a fresh shirt. "Miss Owens," he said, his face brightening when he saw her. "I was hoping to inquire about a room." "Did you go to the Mercer Ranch?" she asked. "I did. They hired me on the spot." Apparently they lost 2 hands last month when a couple of the cowboys decided to try their luck in the gold fields further north. "I start tomorrow, but I need somewhere to stay in town." He paused. "That is, if your aunt has space available. We have 1 room open." Olivia gestured for him to follow her to the small desk where Dot kept the guest register. "Room and board, 2 meals a day, costs $1.50 a week." "That sounds fair." Dot emerged from the kitchen then, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her sharp eyes immediately assessing the newcomer. She was a woman of 50 with silver-streaked hair and a no-nonsense manner that had served her well in running a boarding house alone for the past decade. "You are looking for a room, young man?" "Yes, madam. Tobias Crain. I just hired on at the Mercer Ranch. Ranch hand, are you?" Dot's expression softened slightly. "Good honest work. We serve breakfast at 6 and supper at 7. No drinking in the rooms, no guests after 9 in the evening, and I expect the rent paid on time every week. Can you agree to those terms?" "Yes, madam, I can." "Then welcome to my establishment, Mr. Crain. Olivia, show him to the corner room on the 2nd floor." Olivia led Tobias up the narrow staircase, very aware of his presence behind her. The corner room was small but clean, with a window that looked out over Main Street and a simple iron bedstead with fresh linens. A washstand, a chair, and a small wardrobe completed the furnishings. "It is not much," Olivia said, "but Aunt Dot keeps everything clean and the mattress is good." "It is perfect." Tobias set his saddlebags on the chair. "Much better than sleeping on the ground, which is what I have been doing for the past 2 weeks. Where did you come from?" The question slipped out before Olivia could stop it, too personal for someone she had only just met. But Tobias did not seem to mind. "Texas originally, San Antonio. I have been working my way west, taking ranch jobs where I could find them." He moved to the window, looking out at the street below. "I think I might stay in Red Bluff for a while, though. It seems like a good town." "It is quiet," Olivia said. "Not much excitement, but the people are decent for the most part." "Quiet sounds good to me." He turned from the window. "And it has other attractions." The way he looked at her when he said it made Olivia's pulse quicken. She smoothed her apron unnecessarily, suddenly uncertain what to do with her hands. "I should get back to help Aunt Dot with breakfast. Supper is at 7, as she said." "I will be there." Olivia fled, though she tried to make it look like a calm, measured exit. Her heart was racing in a way that had nothing to do with climbing stairs, and she told herself firmly that she was being ridiculous. Tobias Crain was just another boarder, just another cowboy passing through. Except he had said he might stay. The thought made her smile as she returned to the kitchen. Over the next week, Olivia found herself hyper-aware of Tobias's presence in the boarding house. He was polite to everyone, helpful without being asked, and charmed Dot by fixing a loose board on the back steps without mentioning it, until the work was done. At meals, he sat at the long table with the other boarders and contributed to conversations without dominating them, his deep voice fitting comfortably into the rhythm of boarding house life. And he watched Olivia. Not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but with a quiet attention that made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced before. When she refilled his coffee cup, their eyes would meet, and she would see warmth there, interest, the kind of noticing that went beyond surface politeness. On Sunday, her one full day off from helping Dot, Olivia packed her drawing supplies and headed back to the creek. It had become her sanctuary over the 2 years she had lived with her aunt, the place she went to think and create and be herself without the weight of expectations or propriety. She had come to Red Bluff after her parents died in a fever outbreak in Sacramento, orphaned at 20 with no siblings and no other family besides her aunt. Dot had welcomed her without question, but Olivia still felt like she was trying to figure out where she belonged in the world. The creek helped. The act of drawing helped. Translating what she saw into marks on paper gave her a sense of control, of purpose. She had been sketching for perhaps an hour when she heard hoofbeats approaching. She looked up to see Tobias riding along the creek path, and her heart did that peculiar flutter-skip thing it seemed to do whenever he appeared. He reined in his mare when he saw her, a smile crossing his face. "Miss Owens, I should have known I would find you here. It is my favorite spot." She set down her pencil. "Are you not working today? Mr. Mercer gives us Sundays off unless there is an emergency." He dismounted. "I was just riding out to get a feel for the area. Do you mind if I stay for a bit? I can keep quiet if you are working." "I do not mind." The words came easily, and she realized she meant them. "You can sit if you like." Tobias settled on the grass nearby, close enough to talk but not so close as to crowd her. He took off his hat and tilted his face toward the sun, and Olivia's fingers itched to capture the line of his profile, the way the light played across his features. "What are you drawing today?" he asked after a comfortable silence. "I was working on the trees, but now I think I might draw something else." She flipped to a fresh page, her decision made. "Would you mind being a subject? You can stay just as you are." He looked surprised but pleased. "I have never been drawn before." "Then stay still." She began to sketch, her pencil moving with confidence now. She had drawn him from memory several times over the past week, but having him here, being able to observe the reality rather than the recollection, was entirely different. She noted the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his hair curled slightly at his collar, the calluses on his hands that spoke of hard work. She tried to capture the essential quality of him, the thing that made him Tobias and not just any cowboy. "Can I talk, or do I need to be completely still?" he asked after a few minutes. "You can talk. Just do not move your head too much. How long have you been drawing?" "Since I was a child. My mother encouraged it. She said everyone needed something that was just for them, something that fed their soul." Olivia's pencil paused, then continued. "She was an artist too, though she only painted flowers. She said they were easier than people because they did not fidget." "I am sorry about your parents," Tobias said quietly. "Your aunt mentioned what happened. Thank you. It has been 2 years, but I still miss them." She glanced up at him. "Do you have family in Texas, a brother? He got the family ranch when our father died." "I am the younger son, so I was expected to either stay on and work for my brother or make my own way. I chose to make my own way." "Do you regret it?" "No." His answer was firm. "My brother and I never saw eye to eye. He wanted to run the ranch the same way our father did, never changing, never adapting. I wanted to try new things, experiment with different breeds of cattle, rotate the grazing lands. We argued constantly. Leaving was better for both of us." Olivia understood that kind of friction, the need to escape expectations that did not fit. "Do you miss Texas?" "Sometimes. But I think I was ready for something new, somewhere I could just be myself without the weight of family history." He shifted slightly. "What about you?" "Do you miss Sacramento?" "I miss my parents, but not the city itself. Red Bluff feels more like home than Sacramento ever did. It is smaller, quieter. People mostly leave me alone to draw, which is all I really want." "Mostly." Tobias's tone was gently teasing. "I get the sense I am interrupting that solitude fairly regularly now." Olivia felt herself blush but did not look away from her drawing. "You are a welcome interruption." The words hung in the air between them, more honest than she had intended, but she did not take them back. She heard Tobias's breath catch slightly, and when she finally looked up from her sketchbook, the expression on his face made her pulse race. "May I see?" he asked softly. She turned the sketchbook toward him. She had captured him in three-quarter profile, his face turned toward the sun, an expression of contentment on his features. It was good work, perhaps the best portrait she had ever done, because she had drawn him with more than just technical skill. She had drawn him with feeling. "That is how you see me?" he asked, wonder in his voice. "That is how you are?" He stood slowly, moving to sit beside her on the rock, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cool spring air. "Olivia, I know I have only been in Red Bluff for a week, but I need to tell you something." Her mouth went dry. "What is it?" "I have not been able to stop thinking about you since I saw you here by the creek. I know it is fast, maybe too fast, but I cannot help how I feel. You are on my mind when I am working, when I am trying to sleep, every moment." He took a breath. "I would like permission to court you properly if you would allow it." Olivia's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I would allow it. I would like that very much." The smile that broke across Tobias's face was like sunrise, bright and warming. "Really, really." She closed her sketchbook, setting it aside carefully. "I have been drawing you all week from memory. You are in every sketch I have done since we met." He reached for her hand, his touch gentle, questioning. She let him take it, his calloused fingers warm around hers. "Then we are both afflicted with the same condition." "What condition is that? Falling too fast and not caring about the speed?" She laughed, the sound bubbling up unexpected and joyful. "That is a terrible condition." "The very worst," he agreed, but his eyes were full of happiness. They sat by the creek for another hour, talking about everything and nothing, their hands still joined. Tobias told her about breaking horses on his father's ranch, about the time he had tried to ride a steer on a dare and ended up with a broken collarbone. She told him about her mother's flower paintings, about learning to see light and shadow, about the way drawing made her feel connected to something larger than herself. When the sun began to sink toward the western hills, Tobias insisted on riding slowly back to town so Olivia could walk beside his horse. They kept a respectable distance, aware that Red Bluff was small enough that gossip traveled fast, but their conversation continued all the way back to the boarding house. "Thank you for today," Tobias said as he prepared to take his horse to the livery stable. "Thank you for being willing to sit for a drawing. Anytime you want to draw me, I am yours." He paused. "That is, I am willing, available for drawing." His flustered correction made her smile. "I know what you meant. Good, I will see you at supper. I will be there." Olivia watched him ride toward the livery, then went inside to help Dot with the evening meal. Her aunt took one look at her face and said, "So Tobias Crain finally said something, did he? How did you know? Child, the way that man looks at you could start fires. And you are no better, watching him like you are trying to memorize every detail." Dot handed her a knife and a pile of potatoes to peel. "He is a good man from what I can tell. Respectful, hard-working, honest, but you take your time and be sure of your feelings." "I am sure, Aunt Dot." After a week. But Dot's tone was more amused than skeptical. "Sometimes you just know." Her aunt was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Sometimes you do. Your uncle and I knew after 3 days. Best 22 years of my life before he passed." She squeezed Olivia's shoulder. "Just be smart about it. Do not let people talk." Olivia understood. A young, unmarried woman had to be careful of her reputation, especially in a small town. "We will be proper." "I know you will. Now peel those potatoes before the boarders start complaining about late supper." The next 2 months passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing affection. Tobias courted Olivia with old-fashioned propriety, always mindful of appearances, always respectful of boundaries. He walked her to church on Sundays, sat with her on the boarding house porch in the evenings where anyone could see them, brought her wildflowers he picked on his rides around the ranch, and Olivia drew him. She filled sketchbook after sketchbook with studies of Tobias in every mood and moment she could capture. Tobias laughing at something another boarder said. Tobias concentrating on fixing a broken fence rail in the yard. Tobias reading a week-old newspaper in the evening light. Tobias looking at her with an expression that made her breath catch and her heart race. He asked to see the drawings sometimes, and she would show him selected pages, though some she kept private. The ones where she had tried to capture the way her heart felt when he smiled at her. The ones that were less about technical skill and more about emotion given form, those she kept to herself. In late June, Tobias asked if she would like to see the Mercer Ranch. Mr. Mercer was hosting a small gathering for the ranch hands and their families, a casual afternoon of food and games to celebrate the successful spring branding. Olivia accepted immediately, excited to see Tobias in his working environment, to meet the people he spent his days with. The ranch was beautiful, sprawling across a valley with mountains rising blue-gray in the distance. The main house was a long, low adobe structure with a shaded porch, and behind it were barns, corrals, and bunkhouses. Olivia could see cattle grazing in the far pastures, small dark shapes against the golden grass. "What do you think?" Tobias asked as he helped her down from the wagon he had borrowed to drive them out. "It is lovely. So much space." "That is what I love about it. Room to breathe, room to move." He offered his arm. "Come on, I will introduce you to everyone." The gathering was friendly and welcoming. The other ranch hands teased Tobias good-naturedly about bringing a sweetheart, and their wives and sisters welcomed Olivia into their conversations. She sat with a group of women while Tobias joined a game of horseshoes, and found herself answering questions about her drawing with more confidence than she usually felt. "You should draw the ranch," one woman said. She was the wife of the foreman, a cheerful person named Martha who had a baby on her hip and another child pulling at her skirt. "Some of the views out here are just stunning, especially at sunset." "I would love to," Olivia said honestly, "if Mr. Mercer would not mind." "Mind?" "He would probably pay you for it. He is always talking about how he wishes he had paintings of the ranch to hang in the house." The idea planted itself in Olivia's mind, taking root. She had never seriously considered selling her art before, but the thought of being paid to do what she loved was appealing. It would give her independence, purpose beyond just helping Dot run the boarding house. She filed the thought away to consider later and let herself enjoy the afternoon. The food was plentiful, simple ranch cooking that tasted better for being eaten outdoors with friendly company. Someone brought out a fiddle as the sun began to set, and dancing started in the cleared space near the house. Tobias appeared at her elbow. "May I have this dance, Miss Owens?" "I would be delighted, Mr. Crane." He led her into a simple waltz, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers gently. Olivia had not danced since before her parents died, and she had forgotten how good it felt, the music and movement combining into something joyful. Tobias was a good dancer, leading her confidently through the steps, and she relaxed into the rhythm, trusting him. "I could get used to this," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear over the music. "Dancing, being with you, sharing days like this." He pulled her slightly closer, still respectable but intimate. "Olivia, I have something I want to ask you, but I want to do it right. Can I call on you formally tomorrow evening? Talk to your aunt," her heart jumped. "Yes, of course, yes." He smiled, that sunrise smile she had tried so many times to capture in her drawings. "Good. That is good." They danced until the stars came out, until the evening air turned cool and people began gathering their children and preparing to leave. On the ride back to town, Olivia sat close to Tobias on the wagon seat, their shoulders touching, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. They did not talk much, but the silence was comfortable, full of anticipation for what tomorrow would bring. True to his word, Tobias appeared at the boarding house the next evening dressed in his best shirt, his hair neatly combed, nervousness evident in the way he turned his hat in his hands. Olivia let him in, her own heart pounding, and led him to the small sitting room where Dot was waiting. "Mrs. Owens," Tobias said, his voice steady despite the nerves Olivia could see in his eyes. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Sit down, Tobias." Dot's tone was kind but serious. "Say what you have come to say." He sat on the edge of the sofa, and Olivia sat beside him, her hands folded in her lap. Tobias cleared his throat. "Mrs. Owens, I know I have only been in Red Bluff for 2 months, and you might think that is not long enough to know my own mind. But I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love your niece. I want to marry her, build a life with her if she will have me and if you will give your blessing." Dot looked at Olivia. "And what do you say, child?" "I want to marry him, Aunt Dot. I love him too." "Well then." Dot stood, and both Tobias and Olivia rose with her. "I cannot say I am surprised. You two have been walking around with your hearts in your eyes for weeks now. Tobias, you have my blessing for what it is worth. Olivia is of age and can make her own choices, but I am glad she is choosing a good man." Tobias let out a breath, relief washing over his face. "Thank you, madam. I promise I will take care of her. See that you do." Dot moved toward the door. "I will give you two a few minutes alone to talk, but keep the door open, mind." When Dot had gone, Tobias turned to Olivia and took both her hands in his. "I should have asked you first, before talking to your aunt. Do you truly want to marry me?" "I truly do. Even though I am just a ranch hand with no property of my own and not much money saved. I do not care about those things, I care about you." She squeezed his hands. "We will build a life together. That is all I want." He pulled her into an embrace, proper but heartfelt, his arms strong around her. She rested her head against his chest, hearing his heart beat fast beneath her ear. "I will make you happy," he promised. "I will spend every day trying to make you happy. You already make me happy." He pulled back just enough to look at her face, and then he was kissing her, gentle and sweet and full of promise. It was Olivia's first kiss, and it felt like something clicking into place, like finding a piece of herself she had not known was missing. When they finally drew apart, both a little breathless, Tobias rested his forehead against hers. "How soon can we marry?" "As soon as you like." "Tomorrow." She laughed. "Maybe not quite that soon. We need to arrange things with the church, and I want a proper dress. But soon. A month. I can wait a month." "Barely." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking about the future with an excitement that pushed out everything else. Tobias had been saving his wages and thought he could afford to rent a small house in town. Olivia wanted to pursue selling her drawings, maybe approach Mr. Mercer about commissioning ranch paintings. They talked about children, about building a life together, about the thousand small details that turned dreams into reality. When Tobias finally left, well before the 9 o'clock curfew, Olivia found Dot in the kitchen. Her aunt took one look at her face and pulled her into a hug. "I am happy for you, child, truly happy. I know it is fast. Fast is not always wrong. Your uncle proposed to me after knowing me for a week. Sometimes when it is right, it is right." Dot held her at arm's length. "Now let us talk about this wedding. A month does not give us much time to prepare." The next 4 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Olivia sewed a dress of pale blue calico, the best fabric she could afford, with Dot's help and advice. Tobias spoke to Mr. Mercer about renting one of the small houses on the edge of the ranch property. A 2-room cabin that needed some repairs, but had good bones and a beautiful view of the valley. He spent his free time fixing it up, replacing broken windows, patching the roof, whitewashing the walls. Olivia visited the cabin twice with Dot as chaperone and immediately fell in love with it. It was small but cozy, with a main room that served as kitchen and living space, and a bedroom just large enough for a bed and a wardrobe. The best feature was the front porch, which faced east to catch the morning light. "I could set up my drawing table on the porch," she said, already imagining it. "The light would be perfect." "Then that is exactly what we will do," Tobias said, his arm around her waist. "This will be a home for both our dreams." Mr. Mercer, when approached about buying some of Olivia's drawings, was enthusiastic. He commissioned 3 large sketches of different views of the ranch, offering to pay $20 for the set. It was more money than Olivia had ever made from her art, and the validation made her feel like perhaps she really could build something from her talent. The wedding took place on a Sunday afternoon in late July, in the small church that served Red Bluff and the surrounding area. The guest list was short. Dot, some of the other boarding house residents, several ranch hands and their families, Mr. and Mrs. Mercer. The ceremony itself was simple, traditional vows spoken in voices that shook slightly with emotion. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Tobias kissed Olivia like she was precious and fragile and essential all at once, and she felt tears slip down her cheeks, though she was not sad. She was happier than she had ever imagined being, standing here in this little church with her hand in Tobias's, beginning a new chapter of her life. The celebration afterward was held at the boarding house, Dot having prepared a feast with the help of several women from town. There was dancing and laughter, and Olivia found herself pulled from person to person, receiving congratulations and good wishes until her face hurt from smiling. As evening fell, Tobias borrowed the wagon again, and they drove out to their cabin under a sky turning purple and gold with sunset. Someone had been there ahead of them, probably the ranch hands, because the cabin glowed with lamplight and there were wildflowers in a jar on the table. "Welcome home, Mrs. Crain," Tobias said, lifting Olivia from the wagon and setting her gently on the ground. "Mrs. Crain," she repeated, testing the name. "I like how that sounds." He carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing at the old tradition, and then they were alone in their home, the door closed against the world, their life together truly beginning. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, learning to share space and routines, learning each other's habits and preferences. Tobias rose before dawn to get to the ranch for work, and Olivia learned to wake with him, making coffee and breakfast in the dim pre-dawn light. He came home tired and dusty in the evenings, and she would have supper waiting, simple meals cooked on the wood stove that she was slowly learning to manage in her free hours. Olivia drew. She completed the commission for Mr. Mercer, 3 detailed sketches of the ranch that pleased him so much he immediately ordered 3 more for his office in town. Word spread, and other ranchers approached her with their own requests. She began to build a small reputation as an artist who could capture the essence of the California landscape, the particular quality of light and space that made the region unique. But mostly, she drew Tobias. He was an endless source of inspiration, her favorite subject. She sketched him eating breakfast, his hair still damp from washing. She sketched him mending tack on the porch, his hands moving with practiced skill. She sketched him sleeping, his face peaceful in the lamplight, the harsh lines of his workday smoothed away. He noticed, of course. "You are going to run out of paper if you keep drawing me this much," he teased one evening, watching her work. "Then I will buy more paper." She shaded the line of his jaw, trying to capture the slight stubble that appeared by end of day. "You are my favorite subject. Why is that?" She looked up from her drawing, meeting his eyes. "Because I love you. Because every time I draw you, I understand you a little better, see something new. I could draw you for the rest of my life and never get bored." He moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her free hand. "I love you too. More than I thought it was possible to love another person." "Show me," she whispered, setting aside her sketchbook. He did, carrying her to their bed, their lovemaking tender and passionate and perfect. Afterward, lying in his arms in the darkness, Olivia felt complete in a way she never had before. This was where she belonged with this man, in this life they were building together. The seasons turned. Summer faded into autumn, the hills around Red Bluff turning gold and brown. Olivia continued to build her art business, now making enough money that it contributed meaningfully to their household finances. Tobias earned a promotion at the ranch, being put in charge of the horse-breaking operation, which came with a small raise in pay. In November, Olivia realized her monthly courses were late. She waited another week to be sure, then another, hope and nervousness building in her chest. Finally, she rode into town to see Dr. Morrison, the elderly physician who had practiced in Red Bluff for 30 years. He confirmed what she had suspected. She was going to have a baby, due sometime in late June or early July. Olivia rode home in a daze, her hand resting on her still flat belly, overwhelmed by the magnitude of it. A baby. She and Tobias were going to be parents. She tried to imagine it, tried to picture a child with Tobias's eyes and her own stubbornness, but the image would not quite form. It was too big, too momentous. She decided to tell Tobias at supper, planning how she would say it, but the moment he walked through the door and saw her face, he knew something had happened. "What is it? Are you all right?" He was at her side immediately, hands on her shoulders, worry in his eyes. "I am fine. Better than fine." She took his hand and placed it on her belly. "Tobias, we are going to have a baby." The expression that crossed his face was beyond anything she could have captured in a drawing. Joy and wonder and fear and excitement all mixed together. "Truly, are you certain, Doctor?" Morrison confirmed it this afternoon, due in late June. Tobias let out a whoop of pure happiness and spun her around, careful even in his excitement. "We are having a baby. Olivia, we are going to be parents," she laughed, his joy infectious, all her nervousness melting away. "We are." "Are you happy?" Happy does not even begin to cover it. He set her down gently, his hands framing her face. You have just made me the happiest man alive. The pregnancy progressed normally, if uncomfortably. Olivia suffered through morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon, and her energy flagged as her body worked to create new life. Tobias hovered anxiously, trying to do everything to make her more comfortable, until she had to order him to stop treating her like she was made of glass. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, she reminded him. I am not going to break. I know, but I cannot help worrying. Worry less. Help more by rubbing my feet because they are killing me. He did, settling on the floor and taking her swollen feet into his lap, his strong hands working the aches away. She leaned back in her chair with a sigh of relief, her sketchbook forgotten on the table beside her. Have you been drawing less? Tobias asked, noticing the closed book. A little. It is harder to concentrate, and sitting for long periods makes my back ache. She paused. I have been thinking about something, though. I want to create a series of drawings for the baby, one for each month of the pregnancy, showing how things change. And then after the baby is born, drawings of all the firsts. First smile, first tooth, all of it. That is a beautiful idea. I want our child to know they were wanted, anticipated, loved before they even arrived. Tobias's hands stilled on her feet, and when she looked at him, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. You are going to be such a good mother, and you will be a wonderful father. As winter settled over Red Bluff, Olivia continued to work on her art when energy permitted, but she also spent time preparing for the baby. She sewed small gowns and blankets, her stitches careful and even. Tobias built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth so there were no rough edges, and carved a simple pattern of flowers along the rockers at Olivia's request. Christmas came, their first as a married couple and soon to be parents. They celebrated quietly at the cabin, exchanging small gifts. Tobias gave Olivia a beautiful set of charcoal pencils he had ordered from San Francisco, and she gave him a new leather belt she had tooled herself with a pattern of horses. I have one more gift, he said, after they had opened their packages. He went to the bedroom and returned with a wooden frame, something hidden behind his back. What is it? He turned the frame around. It was one of her drawings, the very first one she had done of him by the creek, professionally matted and framed. I had it done in Sacramento. I wanted to preserve it, this moment when everything changed for both of us. Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes, the pregnancy making her emotions even closer to the surface than usual. It is perfect, thank you. They hung it on the wall above the fireplace, and Olivia stood looking at it for a long moment. The young man in the drawing looked so peaceful, so full of possibility. She remembered that day with perfect clarity, the way her heart had known before her mind, did that Tobias was going to be important to her. What are you thinking? Tobias asked, his arms coming around her from behind, cradling her swollen belly. That I am glad I went to the creek that day. Glad you stopped for water. Glad we found each other. So am I. Best day of my life meeting you. Winter gave way to spring, and Olivia's belly grew round and full. She had to give up riding, which frustrated her, but she could still walk down to the creek when the weather was nice. She would sit on her favorite rock, now with a cushion Tobias had insisted she bring, and draw the changing landscape as new growth appeared and wildflowers bloomed. She was there in late May when Martha, the foreman's wife, found her. I thought I might find you here, Martha said, approaching with a basket. I brought you some bread I baked this morning and some of the apple preserves you like. You are too kind. Olivia accepted the basket gratefully. Sit with me for a while. Martha settled beside her, and they talked about babies and motherhood. Martha sharing stories from her own experiences that were both reassuring and terrifying. When the conversation lulled, Martha gestured to Olivia's sketchbook. "May I see what you are working on?" Olivia showed her the latest drawing, a study of the creek with spring wildflowers blooming along its banks. But when Martha flipped back a page, she found herself looking at another portrait of Tobias, this one showing him with his hand resting on Olivia's belly, both of them looking down at where their baby grew. "Oh, Olivia, this is beautiful," Martha breathed. "Look at the expression on his face. You can see how much he loves you both. He has been so excited about the baby, nervous too, but mostly excited. Jim was the same way with our first. He drove me half crazy with his hovering." Martha smiled at the memory, "But it comes from love, so I learned to tolerate it." They talked until the afternoon grew late, and Martha had to get home to start supper. Olivia packed up her drawing supplies and walked slowly back to the cabin, her hand supporting her lower back. She was tired these days, her body heavy and ungainly, but the baby moved constantly, little flutters and kicks that reminded her something miraculous was happening. June arrived hot and dry, and Olivia felt huge and uncomfortable. The baby was due any day according to Dr. Morrison, who had begun stopping by the cabin regularly to check on her. Dot came out from town twice a week, bringing supplies and company, fussing over Olivia until she wanted to scream from being treated like an invalid. On a Tuesday morning in mid-June, Olivia woke before dawn with a cramping sensation low in her belly. She lay still for a moment, wondering if it was the false labor Dr. Morrison had warned her about, but then another cramp came, stronger this time, and she knew. "Tobias," she said, shaking his shoulder. "Tobias, wake up, the baby is coming." He was awake instantly, going from sleep to full alert in a heartbeat. "Now, are you sure?" "I am sure. You need to get Dr. Morrison and Aunt Dot." He dressed in record time, kissing her quickly before heading out the door. "I will be as fast as I can. Will you be all right alone?" "I will be fine. Just hurry." Alone in the cabin, Olivia tried to remember everything Dr. Morrison had told her about labor. The pains would come and go, getting closer together as time passed. She should walk if she could, try to stay calm, save her strength for when it was truly time to push. She paced the cabin as the sun rose, pausing when contractions hit, breathing through them as best she could. It was harder than she had imagined, the pain more intense, and she found herself grateful when she heard the sound of a wagon approaching and Dot's voice calling her name. Her aunt swept into the cabin like a general taking command, with Dr. Morrison right behind her. Tobias hovered anxiously until Dot shooed him outside, telling him this was women's work and he would just be in the way. The next hours blurred together in a haze of pain and effort. Dot held her hand and wiped her forehead with cool cloths. Dr. Morrison monitored the baby's progress with calm efficiency. Olivia tried to be brave, tried not to scream, but eventually she gave up on dignity and let herself cry out when the contractions peaked. "You are doing wonderfully," Dr. Morrison said in his steady, reassuring voice. "It will not be much longer now." Outside, she could hear Tobias pacing on the porch, his boots a steady rhythm that somehow comforted her. He was there, just beyond the door, waiting for her and their child. Finally, as afternoon shadows began to lengthen, Dr. Morrison told her it was time to push. Olivia bore down with everything she had, feeling like she was being split in two, but Dot's voice in her ear kept her focused. "That is it, child. You can do this. One more big push." And then, with a final tremendous effort, the baby slipped free into Dr. Morrison's waiting hands. For a moment, there was silence and Olivia's heart stopped, but then a cry filled the air, indignant and healthy and beautiful. "It is a boy," Dr. Morrison announced, laying the baby on Olivia's chest. A fine, healthy boy. Olivia looked down at her son, red-faced and squalling, and felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. He was perfect, from his shock of dark hair to his tiny waving fists. She touched his cheek, marveling at the softness of his skin, and he turned toward her touch instinctively. "Can Tobias come in now?" she asked, unable to look away from the baby. "Let me get you cleaned up first," Dot said, but she was smiling. "Give us just a few minutes." When Tobias was finally allowed inside, his eyes went immediately to Olivia, checking that she was all right before moving to the bundle in her arms. His expression transformed, softening into something approaching reverence. "We have a son," Olivia said, shifting so he could see better. "Come meet him." Tobias approached slowly, as if afraid he might somehow break the moment. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, and Olivia placed the baby in his arms. Watching her strong, capable husband hold their tiny son with such gentle care made tears stream down Olivia's face. "He is perfect," Tobias whispered. "Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months without settling on anything definite, but looking at her son now, Olivia knew exactly what he should be called. "James, after your father." Tobias looked up, surprise and emotion in his eyes. "Are you certain? I thought you wanted to name him after your father. We can use Robert as a middle name. James Robert Crain." "James Robert Crain," Tobias repeated, testing the name. He looked down at the baby. "Welcome to the world, James. We have been waiting for you." The baby made a small sound, and Tobias laughed, the joy in it pure and unrestrained. Olivia watched them, her husband and her son, and thought about how much her life had changed in just over a year. From solitary artist drawing alone by a creek to wife and mother, partner in building a family and a future. She reached for her sketchbook on the bedside table, and Dot handed it to her with a knowing smile. "Cannot help yourself, can you?" "I need to capture this," Olivia said, her pencil already moving across the page. "I need to remember exactly how this feels." She drew quickly, letting instinct guide her hand more than conscious thought. Tobias holding James, the expression on his face beyond any single emotion, love and pride and wonder all mixed together. She drew until her hand cramped and exhaustion pulled at her, and when she finally set down the pencil, she had created something she knew she would treasure forever. "All right, enough," Dr. Morrison said firmly. "You need to rest now, Mrs. Crain. That was hard work you did today." Olivia let Dot take the sketchbook and arrange her pillows. Tobias placed James in the cradle beside the bed, and then he lay down carefully next to Olivia, his arm around her shoulders. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for our son, for this life, for everything. Thank you for finding me by the creek. I will thank whatever fortune led me there every day for the rest of my life." They lay together as the room grew darker and James slept peacefully in his cradle, the beginning of their family, the continuation of their love story. The first year of James's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Olivia drew constantly, keeping her promise to document every milestone. James's first smile, captured in quick sketches done while he was in his cradle. His first tooth, drawn from memory after he finally fell asleep. His first attempts at crawling, multiple studies showing the determination on his face as he learned to move. Tobias was a devoted father, involved in James's care in a way that surprised some of the other ranch hands, but that felt completely natural to Olivia. He would come home from a long day of work and immediately take James, walking him around the cabin, telling him stories about the horses and cattle, describing the landscape beyond the windows in elaborate detail, even though the baby could not possibly understand. "He will learn to love the land if I start early," Tobias explained when Olivia teased him about it. "Or he will become a banker and move to San Francisco just to be contrary. Then we will love him anyway and visit as often as we can." Olivia's art business continued to grow. She now had regular commissions from ranchers throughout the region, and she had even sold several drawings to a gallery in Sacramento that specialized in Western landscapes. The money she earned was enough that they had started saving for a future they were beginning to plan together. Their own land, their own ranch, independence. "If we are careful and keep saving, we could have enough for a down payment in 2 or 3 years, Tobias said one evening, going over their finances at the table. "There is land available north of here, good grazing, water rights. We could start small, build up gradually." "Our own ranch," Olivia said, the idea taking shape in her mind. "James could grow up there, learn the business from you. And if we have more children, there would be room for everyone. Space for your studio so you can work in peace." They talked late into the night about their dreams, making plans, calculating possibilities. It felt good to have a goal to work toward, a shared vision of the future. That future began to feel more immediate when, shortly after James's first birthday, Olivia realized she was pregnant again. The second pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect, or perhaps because chasing after an active toddler left less time to dwell on discomfort. Their daughter was born in late March of 1881, arriving quickly in the early hours of the morning, before Dr. Morrison could even make it to the cabin. Dot, who had been staying with them in anticipation of the birth, helped deliver the baby with a calm competence that Olivia found deeply reassuring. "Another healthy child," Dot announced, placing the baby girl in Olivia's arms. "And this one looks just like you." She was right. Where James had Tobias's dark coloring, this baby had Olivia's lighter hair and delicate features. Her eyes, when she opened them, were blue like her mother's. They named her Rose Dorothy, the first name because Olivia had always loved roses, the middle name for Dot, who had been such a constant support. Tobias adored her instantly, his little girl, treating her with a gentleness that made Olivia fall in love with him all over again. With 2 children now, life became even busier. Olivia had less time for her art, but she found ways to work it in, sketching while James napped and Rose was content in her cradle. Her sketchbooks filled with images of her growing family. James learning to walk, then to run. Rose's first smile, eerily similar to the one Olivia had captured of James at the same age. Tobias teaching James about horses, the 4 of them together on the porch in the evening light. The ranch they dreamed of crept closer to reality. By 1883, they had saved enough for a down payment on 200 acres of land north of Red Bluff, with a small house that needed work but had good bones. Mr. Mercer, who had become a friend and mentor to Tobias over the years, helped negotiate the purchase and even extended a small loan to help with immediate repairs. Moving to their own land felt like stepping into a dream. The house was larger than their cabin, with 3 bedrooms and a separate room that Olivia immediately claimed as her studio. The land stretched in gentle rolls toward the mountains, with a creek running through it and good grass for grazing. Tobias bought 10 head of cattle to start with, planning to breed them carefully and expand the herd gradually. He also bought 2 horses, one for working the ranch and one that could be ridden by Olivia when she needed to go into town. James, now 4 years old, was beside himself with excitement at having his own ranch, following Tobias everywhere, asking endless questions. Rose, at 2, was more interested in the wildflowers that grew near the creek, picking them and bringing them to Olivia in sticky-handed bouquets. Olivia pressed some of them in her sketchbooks, preserving their beauty, and used them as models for small botanical studies she could complete between her ranch landscape commissions. The first years on their own land were hard work, but deeply satisfying. Tobias managed the cattle and horses while Olivia ran the household and continued her art. They hired a ranch hand to help with the heavier work, a young man named Sam who was learning the ranching business and grateful for patient teachers. Olivia's reputation as an artist continued to grow. The gallery in Sacramento now had a standing order for her work, and she had pieces hanging in several businesses in Red Bluff. She still drew her family constantly, though, her personal work that she rarely showed to anyone outside their home. In 1885, she became pregnant again, and this time when the baby arrived in early winter, it was another boy. They named him Thomas, and he had a personality that was evident from birth. Louder than his siblings, more demanding but also more quick to smile, more easily delighted. 3 children, Tobias said, holding Thomas while James and Rose peered at their new brother with cautious interest. "We are officially outnumbered. We are officially blessed," Olivia corrected, though she was exhausted in the way only a mother of 3 small children could be. The ranch continued to grow. By 1887, they had 50 head of cattle, a small herd of horses, and enough income that they could hire a second ranch hand and even employ a woman from town to help Olivia with the housework and children twice a week. The breathing room let Olivia return to her art more seriously, and she began working on a large project. A series of drawings documenting ranch life over the course of a full year, capturing the rhythm of the seasons and the work they demanded. Tobias was her constant collaborator and first audience, offering feedback and suggestions, modeling when she needed a human figure to complete a composition. He appeared in most of the drawings, a central figure in the life of the ranch because he was central to their life, period. "You are still drawing me," he observed one evening, looking at the latest sketch she had completed, him on horseback working cattle, the mountains in the background. "Always," she said simply. "You are still my favorite subject. After all these years. After all these years." She set down her pencil and moved to where he sat in his chair by the fireplace. "I could draw you for a lifetime and never exhaust the subject." He pulled her into his lap, careful of her sketchbook. "I love you, Olivia Crain. I love you too." From the bedrooms down the hall, they could hear the sounds of their children settling for the night. James reading to Rose from one of his schoolbooks, Thomas singing to himself in his bed. The sounds of family, of home, of the life they had built together from a chance meeting by a creek 10 years ago. "Do you ever think about that day?" Olivia asked. "The day we met. All the time, I think about how easily it could have gone differently. If I had watered my horse upstream instead of following the creek to where you were, if you had been drawing somewhere else, if I had not stopped. But you did stop. Best decision I ever made." He kissed her forehead. "Though I suspect I was always meant to find you. Some things are just written in the stars." Olivia settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, the steady rhythm that had become the soundtrack of her life. "I like to think so too." They sat together in the quiet evening, the fire crackling in the hearth, their children safe and loved in their beds. The ranch settled around them like a promise kept. Olivia thought about all the moments that had led to this one, all the choices and chances and small miracles that had brought her from a solitary artist sketching alone to the center of this busy, beautiful, chaotic life. She would not trade a single moment of it. The years continued to pass, each one adding layers to their life, depth to their love. James grew tall and serious, fascinated by the cattle business, already talking about taking over the ranch someday. Rose became Olivia's shadow, learning to draw, showing a talent that thrilled and humbled her mother in equal measure. Thomas remained the wild one, all energy and enthusiasm, equally likely to be found climbing trees or helping Tobias gentle a young horse. In 1890, Olivia held her first formal exhibition at the Sacramento Gallery, a collection of her ranch year drawings that garnered attention from as far away as San Francisco. The local newspaper wrote a glowing review, calling her the artistic voice of the California ranch country, capturing the dignity and beauty of agricultural life with uncommon skill. Tobias made the trip to Sacramento with her for the opening, leaving the children with Dot, who was now in her 60s but still formidable. Standing in the gallery watching strangers admire her work, Olivia felt Tobias's hand find hers. "Your mother would be proud," he said quietly. "You have become everything she hoped you would." "We have become everything I hoped we would," she squeezed his hand. "This is all wonderful, but it is not the thing I am most proud of." "What is?" "Our family, our life, every day with you and our children." He kissed her there in the gallery, not caring who saw, and she kissed him back, this man who had first appeared in her drawings and then in her life, who had become the foundation of everything she held dear. The success of the exhibition led to more commissions, more opportunities. Olivia could have pursued a career as a professional artist full-time, could have perhaps even moved to a city where art was more valued and celebrated. But she had no interest in that path. Her life was on the ranch, with Tobias and their children, drawing the landscape and people she loved. By 1895, James was 17 and taking on more responsibility on the ranch. Rose was 14 and showing signs of becoming an even more talented artist than Olivia, though she combined it with a head for business that suggested she might end up doing something entirely her own. Thomas was 12 and kept everyone entertained with his schemes and adventures. Dot passed away peacefully in her sleep that year, at the age of 67, having lived to see Olivia happy and settled. They buried her in the Red Bluff cemetery, and Olivia mourned the loss of the woman who had taken her in and supported her when she had no one else. But she also gave thanks for the years they had shared, for Dot's wisdom and love. As the century drew to a close, Olivia and Tobias found themselves entering middle age with grace and gratitude. He was 45 now, his dark hair showing threads of silver, his face lined by years of sun and wind and laughter. She was 42, her hands showing the first signs of arthritis that sometimes made drawing difficult, but her eyes still sharp, still seeing beauty everywhere she looked. They had been married for 21 years, and the love between them had only deepened, becoming something solid and unshakable, tested by time and trial and found true. One evening in the summer of 1899, Olivia was in her studio working on a commission when Tobias appeared in the doorway. She looked up, immediately noting something different in his expression. "What is it? Come outside. I want to show you something." She set down her charcoal and followed him out to the porch, where the sunset was painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Tobias led her to the railing and pointed toward the eastern pasture. "Look there." She followed his gesture and saw James working with a young horse, his movements patient and skilled, a mirror of how Tobias had taught him. Beyond him, Rose sat on a fence rail with a sketchbook, drawing the scene. Thomas was helping Sam repair a section of fence, their voices carrying faintly across the distance. "Our children," Tobias said, "our legacy. Everything we have built together." Olivia leaned into him, his arm coming around her automatically. "It is a good legacy. The best." He paused. "I have been thinking about something. James is ready to take on more of the ranch management. He knows the business inside and out, And Rose is talking about opening her own studio in town, teaching art to young people. Thomas will find his own path, whatever it may be. What are you saying? I am saying maybe it is time for us to slow down a bit. Let the next generation step up while we are still here to guide them. Spend more time doing the things we love. He turned her to face him. I want to travel with you, show you places you have only drawn from photographs. I want lazy mornings and long afternoons. I want to grow old with you, Olivia, really old, and enjoy every moment of it. She felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. That sounds perfect, does it? Truly, truly. As long as I am with you, anywhere sounds perfect. He kissed her as the sunset faded to twilight, and in the distance, their children went about their lives, carrying forward the love and lessons they had been given. Over the next few years, the transition happened gradually. James took over day-to-day management of the ranch, proving himself more than capable. Rose did open a studio in Red Bluff, teaching drawing and painting to anyone who wanted to learn, while continuing to develop her own distinctive artistic voice. Thomas, surprising everyone, developed a passion for veterinary medicine and left for school in San Francisco, planning to return and serve the ranching community. Olivia and Tobias did travel, taking trips to San Francisco and Los Angeles, to San Diego and north to Oregon. Everywhere they went, Olivia drew, her sketchbooks filling with new landscapes, new faces, new experiences. But she always drew Tobias too, her constant companion, her favorite subject. In 1904, they celebrated their 26th wedding anniversary quietly at the ranch, surrounded by their children and a growing brood of grandchildren. James had married a young woman named Sarah from a neighboring ranch, and they had 2 children already with a third on the way. Rose had married a teacher from Red Bluff, a gentle man who supported her art and made her laugh. Thomas was still in school, still finding his way, but he wrote home regularly with stories that kept everyone entertained. At the anniversary dinner, James stood to make a toast. To my parents, who showed us what love looks like when it is built on friendship, respect, and genuine partnership. You have given us everything: a home, a legacy, and an example of how to live a life that matters. We love you both. Olivia looked at Tobias across the table, saw the emotion in his eyes that matched her own. They had started with nothing but love and hope, and they had built something that would outlast them, something that would echo through generations. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Olivia and Tobias sat on their porch watching the stars. She had her sketchbook with her, as always, and she was working on a drawing by lamplight. "What are you working on?" Tobias asked. She turned the book so he could see. It was him, of course, sitting in his porch chair, his face relaxed and peaceful in the evening. But around the edges of the portrait, she had added small vignettes. The creek where they had met, their first cabin, the ranch, their children at various ages, moments from their life together. "It is everything," she said, "our whole story in one image. It is beautiful, like everything you create." He took her hand. "I have been the subject of your drawings for 26 years now. Do you never get tired of drawing the same person?" She smiled, setting aside the sketchbook and turning to face him fully. "I have told you before, and I will tell you until my last breath. I could draw you for 100 years and never exhaust the subject. You change, I change, we change together. Every drawing captures a different moment, a different truth. I love you, Olivia. I have loved you since the moment I saw you by that creek, and I will love you until the day I die. And I love you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They sat together in the comfortable silence of long companionship, hands linked, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Olivia thought about her sketchbooks, now dozens of them, filled with thousands of drawings of Tobias in every mood and moment. He was there in graphite and charcoal, in quick sketches and finished pieces, young and aging, working and resting, laughing and serious. He was there because he was essential, because capturing him on paper was how she processed her love, how she made sense of the blessing of being loved in return. The years continued, kinder to them than to many. They aged together gracefully, their children building their own lives while remaining close, their grandchildren bringing new joy and chaos into their days. Olivia's hands grew more gnarled with arthritis, but she adapted her technique, working in shorter sessions, using looser strokes that actually brought a new vitality to her work. Tobias's body bore the marks of a lifetime of ranch work, old injuries that ached in cold weather, the inevitable slowing that came with age. But his mind stayed sharp, and his love for Olivia never wavered. In 1915, they celebrated their 37th anniversary. Tobias was 62, Olivia 59. Their children threw them a party, half of Red Bluff showing up to celebrate the couple who had become something of a local legend. The talented artist and her devoted cowboy, still in love after all these years. During the party, Rose unveiled a gift she had been working on in secret. It was a large framed piece, a careful reproduction of one of Olivia's early drawings, Tobias by the creek, the very first portrait she had ever done of him. Rose had copied it exactly, down to the finest detail, preserving the original in case time faded it. "So we never forget where it all started," Rose said, presenting it to her mother. Olivia wept openly, holding her daughter close. "Thank you. This is the most precious gift you could have given me." They hung the reproduction in their bedroom, where they could see it every morning and every night, a reminder of beginnings, of the moment that had changed everything. The years began to take their toll as the 1910s progressed. Tobias's old injuries caught up with him, and by 1918, he was spending more time in a chair on the porch than working on the ranch. But he remained cheerful, content to watch James and Thomas, who had returned from school and set up a veterinary practice in Red Bluff, manage the ranch operations. Olivia's arthritis made drawing increasingly difficult, but she refused to stop entirely. Her later work had a spare, expressive quality, every line essential, nothing wasted. Critics who saw it called it her best work, the distillation of a lifetime of observation and skill. But mostly, she drew Tobias. Even when her hands could barely hold the pencil, she drew him, capturing the man she loved as he aged, as his body slowed but his spirit remained undimmed. In the spring of 1920, Tobias fell ill with pneumonia. Dr. Morrison, now in his 80s himself and semi-retired, came out to the ranch and did what he could, but they all knew the truth. At 67, with lungs weakened by decades of dust and hard work, Tobias did not have the strength to fight off the infection. Olivia moved a cot into their bedroom and did not leave his side. Their children came and went, saying their goodbyes, but mostly she wanted him to herself, these last days or hours or moments they would have together. "I am sorry," Tobias said, his voice weak but still his voice. "I wanted more time with you. We have had 42 years, Olivia said, holding his hand carefully, afraid of hurting him even now. 42 blessed years. Some people do not get even one, still not enough. No, she agreed, it will never be enough. But I am grateful for every moment we had." He was quiet for a while, his breathing labored. Then he said, "Will you draw me one more time?" "Of course." James brought her sketchbook and pencils, and Olivia worked with aching hands, tears streaming down her face, capturing Tobias in their bed, the morning light from the window painting him in soft gold. She drew his face, lined and weary but still handsome to her, still the face of the man she loved. She drew his hand in hers, their fingers intertwined. When she finished, she showed him the drawing. He looked at it for a long moment, then smiled. "You made me look noble. I drew what I see, and you are noble. You have always been noble. I was just a cowboy who got lucky enough to find the right woman by a creek one day. You were everything. You are everything." He squeezed her hand weakly. "Keep drawing, promise me. Even after I am gone, you keep drawing, I promise. And know that I loved you. Every single day, I loved you more. I know. And I loved you the same." Tobias Crain died peacefully that evening, with Olivia holding his hand and their children gathered around. His last words were beautiful, looking at Olivia's face, and then he was gone, slipping away as the sun set over the ranch they had built together. The grief was overwhelming. Olivia felt like she had lost part of herself, the essential part that had made life worth living. She went through the motions of the funeral, accepting condolences, playing the role expected of her. But inside she felt hollow, lost. It was Rose who brought her back after a week of Olivia sitting in her studio staring at blank pages. "Mama, you made him a promise. You need to keep drawing." "I cannot. Every time I try, I just see him and it hurts too much." "Then draw him. Draw the hurt. Draw what you are feeling." So Olivia did. She drew Tobias from memory, hundreds of drawings filling sketchbook after sketchbook. She drew him young and laughing, middle-aged and serious, old and peaceful. She drew their life together, every moment she could remember, pouring her grief and love onto the page. And slowly, over months and then years, the grief transformed into something softer. Not gone, never gone, but bearable. She could think of Tobias and smile instead of only cry. She could remember their life together with joy instead of only loss. She continued to live on the ranch, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, drawing every day just as she had promised. Her reputation as an artist grew even larger in her later years, galleries clamoring for her work, critics writing essays about her technique and vision. But Olivia did not care about any of that. She drew because it was who she was, because it connected her to Tobias in a way nothing else could. He appeared in every drawing, even the ones where he was not physically present. He was there in the way she saw light, in the way she composed a scene, in every mark she made. On her 70th birthday in 1929, her children organized an exhibition of her work in Red Bluff, bringing together pieces from throughout her career. Walking through the gallery, Olivia was struck by how much of it was Tobias. Hundreds of portraits spanning 5 decades, a chronicle of one man's life and one woman's enduring love. He would have been embarrassed by all this attention, James said, standing beside his mother in front of a particularly striking portrait of Tobias in his 40s, working with a horse. "He would have," Olivia agreed, "but he would have understood why I needed to do it. He always understood." She lived another 15 years, dying peacefully in her sleep in 1944 at the age of 85. In her will, she left instructions that she be buried beside Tobias in the Red Bluff Cemetery, and that her personal sketchbooks, the ones not already in galleries or sold, should stay with the family, a record of their love for future generations. Her last drawing, found on her bedside table the morning after she died, was of Tobias as she had first seen him. By the creek, his face turned toward the sun, peaceful and present and perfect. Beside it, she had written in her shaky handwriting, "He found me sketching by the creek." He became the subject of every drawing after. He became my whole world. Until we meet again, my love. Rose, now in her 60s herself with children and grandchildren of her own, found the drawing and wept. She had it framed and hung it in the ranch house, beside the reproduction. she had made all those years ago for their anniversary. Together, the two images bracketed a lifetime of love, from beginning to end, captured in graphite and charcoal by a woman who had learned to see the extraordinary in the everyday. The ranch continued, passing through generations, each one adding to the legacy. But in the main house, always, were Olivia's drawings of Tobias, a constant reminder of where it all began. A chance meeting, a moment of connection, and a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond, immortalized in art that would endure long after both the artist and her subject had returned to dust. Years later, scholars studying Olivia's work would note the unusual focus on a single subject, the way she had returned again and again to drawing the same man. Some would call it obsessive. Others would recognize it for what it was: a great love rendered visible, a partnership of equals captured in thousands of moments, proof that some people find their other half and hold on tight, drawing them close in every sense of the word. But to the family, to the descendants of Tobias and Olivia Crain who still worked the ranch they had built, the drawings were simply grandma and grandpa, a love story told in images, a reminder of what was possible when two people found each other and chose to build a life together. The creek still flowed, unchanged by the passage of time. The landscape still rolled toward the mountains, still painted itself in gold and green with the turning seasons. And somewhere, perhaps, in the collection of moments that made up their shared existence, Tobias Crain was still finding Olivia Owens by that creek, still becoming the subject of every drawing after, still beginning a love story that would echo through the generations, a testament to the enduring power of connection, commitment, and the simple act of seeing another person truly, and drawing them close, over and over again, for a lifetime.